Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today, we will talk about some tips for ultralight. I usually close up, or not really close up, but I usually put a pause to the series of, whatever we're talking about with some tips and tricks. And going through my list, I actually did not do it for ultralight. So we'll do it now. All right. So we first start with the rod, and then reels, and then line. And then we go to lures, and then for this particular instance, actually, we're going to be talking about hooks as well and other hardware. Okay, no, for the rod, have an example here. JDM ultralight rods that are long are not easy to find. Okay, this is a very good example here. We have a Dialuna XR. And another example is, of course, the Varivas Violente that I have. And both of these rods are now discontinued. But you can still find them. Okay, now if you get a chance to get one, take it. Okay, now I don't know what rods are available now that are of the same specs but are longer. Okay, but this particular one right here is I'll read you the specs. Okay, so this is 8'6". So I mean, 6 inches short of 9 feet. This is quite long for an ultralight rod. It has a lure weight of 2 to 15, but a majority of the time I don't get past like 8 grams when I'm fishing this. Okay, so probably like 10 at the very most, but the range is like 2 to 8 grams. This is the work that this does for me. Okay, line weight is 0.3 to 1. So it's really on the light side. And so yeah, lure weight 2 to 15. Although I haven't really tried it on 15. I think there are rods that can handle 15 better. Probably 8 at the very most for this particular one. They're not easy to find. Okay. Now, long rods are not too common. Okay. But if you find them, seriously, go and get one. Okay. Get it if you can have if you have the chance. I'm not saying that you should go out there and actively look for one. It's just that if you have one in your arsenal, it's actually very good. Now, the reason being is the ability to send out smaller lures in long distances, normally not reached by tiny lures, is a huge strategic advantage, huge gain on your part. Okay, there are literally no downsides to having something that does that. Okay, literally nothing. Of course, you have a presentation that no one has in your immediate vicinity. Okay, giving you a huge advantage. Okay. And listen, like these things, when they reach a really long distance, like distances that those fish don't see the kind of pressure that the closer in fish are seeing, guys, huge game changer. All right. So if you can, I'm not saying that you should absolutely have, but it really has changed the fishing for me. And the presentation, like guys, I'll tell you one story. A very good fisherman who I will not name fished with me several times. And the difference is that he was using a shorter rod and I was using something that's very long. Trust me, I outfished him like 5 to 1. He was literally just looking at me, taking fish off and then dropping it. Okay, so in several instances, I literally outfished him only because I was using a rod that could cast farther than he could. Okay, and he tried kind of going into the water a little bit, cast a bit far out, and that didn't happen. Still outfished him. The line I was using was also different from what he was using, and which gave me an even bigger advantage. So end of the day, the rod is actually the vehicle for me to cast out quite far. And those fish are not as pressured as the one that's closer in. And mind you, we were fishing in an area where it sees very little traffic. So it was a private, we were fishing the palm. Okay. So And I was telling him like, dude, we should actually have rods that are longer. He didn't listen. So at the end of the day, guess what? Just because I was casting farther, I was catching more, period. All right. So have at least one in your arsenal, and they will pay for them in spades. I literally. All right. So JDM ultralight fishing is quite technical, and there's a huge industry backing this type of fishing. There are a lot of good rod manufacturers, quite specifically, that are catering only to the ultralight fishing segment. Okay, like TICT is actually one. TIC, okay, is one of those brands, and they manufacture really good rods. Okay, but don't discount the fact that there are bigger companies like Pure Fishing, okay, that are also selling rods in this market. Okay, and what I'm asking for you guys, or Shimano for that matter, right? Shimano, Daiwa, they all are selling stuff in this market. Don't get too hung up on these like major brands and stuff. Okay, there are brands like again, Shimano, Daiwa, Abu Garcia is literally one that I'm gonna name drop because that's like super important. You can often get better deals on good rods with brands like Abu Garcia. Okay, they're not purely into ultralight. They have their fingers dipped in all sorts of things. Okay, but they have rods for ultralight fishing, and guess what? Since they're a very, very big company and they're doing a lot of things, you can get really good deals from a brand like that. Obviously, we're talking about the Abu Garcia in Japan and not in the US. Okay, so you can find really good rods and really good prices on these rods in the JDM market. So don't get hung up on specific ultralight companies like TICT and stuff. There are rods from Abu Garcia that are actually really, really good. How do you know if they're good? Well, if you look on YouTube, you'll eventually, what you'll find is you'll find a lot of people actually talking about the rod and stuff, and then you could just kind of compare. Now, granted that they're not super into the research and development of these rods, it might be that these rods wouldn't be as good as like the specific ultralight ones. But then if that's the kind of rod that you're looking for, look into Daiwa and Shimano that have bigger budgets, like go into this sort of thing. Shimano has the Soiree brand that's actually into this type of fishing. So go ahead and look for the Soiree rods and reels, and you'll find that they're actually really good. Abu Garcia, they're kind of like Mavericks, and this sort of thing. You'll find like a really long shore jigging rod, but it's super ultralight. So that's why I kind of like the way Abu Garcia is like doing stuff. So check that out, because I almost bought a rod from them. It was like 9 feet something, and it was ultralight. And guess what? Someone bought the rod before I could, so that's a bummer. But they have rods like that I think are breaking the mold on certain things, and that's pretty cool seeing, and actually living in the time when these things are being introduced. That's pretty cool. There are rods rated for all sorts of different types of fishing in the ultralight segment. There's Mebaru, Kiss, as far as ultralight fishing is in Japan. The ones for Aji are the ones that are with the widest selection and lengths. There's literally a whole industry backing this sort of fishing. So when buying your first ultralight rod, pick out one of those rods specifically, the ones that are made for Aji, and you'll find that there's lures that are also like literally made for Aji, right? So if you want to get into this type of fishing, this Japanese style ultralight, okay, and remember, there's trout stuff too that's in this category. So, but those are more expensive. So Aji is actually very accessible when it comes to like the fishing in Japan. It's very accessible for a lot of people, and I think it gives you better value right? So if you're getting into this type of ultralight fishing, check out the ones for Aji, okay? Especially when you're picking out your first rod and stuff. So comparing these to ultralight rods that you find in the US, an Aji rod would be more lighter, sensitive, okay? And then look into the components when you're buying, okay? So there are rods that have like over the top titanium frames and SIC guides. You don't need stuff like that. You know, alkanite for the rings and stainless frames are good. And yeah, I mean, that's that's basically something that's kind of entry level. So I have a rod that's actually on the cheaper side of things, and it's literally one of the rods that I always take with me. It is a Major Craft, and it's from the Solpara series, and Solpara is like literally number 2 from the bottom. But this rod is actually really made well, you know, really good components, really good blanks and stuff like that. And I use it a lot, and for the price I paid for it, it's like peanuts. And until this day, I use that rod a lot. I might be using it for bait and you know, small lead head jigs that I tie flies onto. But there are times when I pick it up more than I would with the more expensive rods, because it's really built that well. Okay, so yeah, just go ahead and pick rods with at least alkanite as your guides. Componentry, usually as far as Japanese rods are concerned, they're mostly Fuji. So when you're picking out your first rod, pick out the ones that's labeled Aji, not Mebaru, because most of the times it's Aji, Mebaru, or Aji and Mebaru. Pick one that's for Aji, and I guarantee you it's really good. Now, when you're applying it to like the fish, especially freshwater fish in the States, you'll find that these rods are just so different from the actions that you find in the States. Like they're ultralight rods in the States. These rods are stiffer and they're more sensitive at the tip, and they're also lighter. When you fish for them, you feel everything. You know, comparing that to the ultralight rods that you find in the States. Now, there are really good ultralight rods in the States, but again, these are for trout, and you know, they're a bit more. I guess they're a bit more pricey. So, and especially when you're just fishing for panfish or you're fishing for anything, right? These rods are more superior, and I know this because I have like a few friends that actually can compare and have compared these in the States, and they found that the JDM stuff is actually just better. Now let's move on to tips for reels. Now here's something very interesting. So I use mostly 1,000 and 2,000 size reels. So this is 1,000, this is a 2,000, which is weird because it's literally like a 1,000 size, but I think it has to do with the spool. All right. So I use a lot of 1,000 and 2,000 sized reels as opposed to 2,500s. Okay. A bit lighter weight. The 1,000 and the 2,000 size reels share the same body. Okay. The spool is where the difference is. And I think the 2,000 is like a 2,000C. So it's a 2,000 compact. Okay. So yeah, it is. It's a C2000 right there. So when you have a compact reel, it means that it has the same body as a 1,000, but the spool is different. It's bigger, deeper. It has more capacity, but essentially a 1,000 sized body. Okay. Now, these reels. Okay. So if you have like a 2,000, a C2000, you have more capacity. Now, there are several instances, especially with this reel right here, several instances where I actually hooked something big. Okay, so I'm fishing freshwater. There's always that chance of me hooking something up. In this particular instance, it was a cobia, because I was fishing off the back of a stingray in shallow water. I cast it out from behind, and then I got struck. I didn't know what it was because, you know, it was camouflage, but guess what? It was a cobia. Now, I fought that thing for 23 minutes on this particular reel, and it had 2.75 pound leader, just like that. The fight lasted for 23 minutes, and I did see the fish, and it was a cobia, because several times I had it really close, and it kind of turned, and I had a fighting chance up until it went to the bay, where it could just go straight and spool me out, and eventually the leader popped. So it was the leader that was damaged, but if it didn't pop, maybe I could have landed that fish. But a 1,000, 2,000 sized reel, okay, or a C2000 spool on a reel will give you a fighting chance when you actually hook that big one. Whereas if you just fish with something like a 1,000 straight right here, and it has a shallow spool, what's going to happen is that you're going to get spooled out. Now, why not a 2,500? Well, a 2,500's body is actually quite big compared to the 2,000. So not only will you get like sensitivity because it's lighter, but the spool on a 2,000 is actually quite comparable in capacity to a 2,500, especially if it's a shallow spool. So, fighting chance. And it's, guess what? It's literally a 1,000 sized reel with a different spool. Okay, so between a 1,000 and a 2,000C, or a compact 2,000, pick the 2,000C because it'll give you more capacity in a 1,000 sized body. So you have the compactness, the lightness of a 1,000, but twice the capacity. Power gear. All right, so power geared reels probably be the best speed that you'll have for ultralight. Okay, and for a broad range of applications. So for metal blade baits, soft plastics, to spoons and plugs. PG, I found, especially in the 1,000 or 2,000C size, will give you the most desirable action. Okay, now if you crank this as fast as you can, the spoon will just wobble and it will not spin. Now try that with an XG or an HG, and you'll find that your spoon will start spinning. But I've found that presentations that I do with PG, like spoons and all, even plugs, you can spin it as fast as you can like that. That's a fast retrieve right there. And guess what? It will just shimmy because the line that goes back into the spool is not as much as this one would take in. All right, so it gives you better action. Now, what about the XGs and the HGs? Okay, what about them? Well, yeah, they're good too, but you'd have to slow down your speed, okay? And it's far easier to actually grind fast than to actually grind slow. So, PG is my pick, okay? It gives you the most natural of the presentation speeds. Obviously, there are times when you will find that a faster reel will make the fish respond more. And for run and gun fishing, obviously, this will suit you better. You cast here, you reel fast, you get the lure back, you could cast immediately. For the PG, you can't. It's much more precise. So when I am, let's say, trying to find the fish in a given area, I tend to use faster reels. But when I find the fish and I will need to concentrate on getting them to bite, the PG is the one. So searching, HGs, okay? And when I'm fishing, using specific techniques, going after the fish, I switch to a PG, okay? So that's how I do things. Now, composite reels and metal-bodied reels. Like this is plastic, this is plastic. These are two of the most used reels I have because they're lighter. Now, it is worth the money getting a reel such as a Vanquish or a Stella, and the sizes that they have in like the lower sizes is actually made out of magnesium. And I could say that, hey, go ahead, and if you like this sort of fishing, go ahead and buy something like that. And it's not just hyping it, okay? Magnesium reels, lighter. This is way lighter than this. Okay, this is way lighter than this. This is a 1000 sized Stella. This is a 2000 sized Soiree, and this is supposed to be for Aji and smaller stuff. Okay, but I have this because I love this this type of fishing. And guess what? This reel gives me super sensitivity, and obviously because it's metal bodied and all that, when I hook something big, it's not gonna flex on me. It has proven itself a lot of times. Obviously, you don't have to buy a Stella. A cheaper alternative would be a Vanquish. Okay, and the Vanquish, as far as the MGL series is concerned, is actually on the top. Okay, the Core Protect is the Stella. So it's your choice, but I would really, I'd really encourage to, if you had the extra budget, go for something like a Vanquish, because honestly, when you try it out and you fish with it, it'll change the way you're fishing, especially when you're fishing ultralight, where sometimes or most of the time the fish would actually take the lure. You don't know that they already have it, you know, because you're fishing with very light weights. And yeah, in the eventuality of you hooking something big, these sort of reels will actually help you out. Line. All right, so after going around testing a lot of lines, I have been using Momoy Oshikage in most of my reels. So you can see here, those are all Oshikage. And after finding these, I really had no reason to look elsewhere. So I'm not even using ester lines or whatnot. I am using Momoy Oshikage, and I have been satisfied for a really long time. So I really encourage, for those guys that have not tried this line yet, go ahead and look for Oshikage. Now, I also have a lot of Suffix Pro 8 and even 832 in very, very light. I have like the very rare 3 pounds for 832. Not bad, but I found that, you know, they could be kind of a headache sometimes compared to Oshikage. All right, so although I have them, and have some of the reels actually have them, and I haven't taken them off. But if I have Oshikage, I'm using Oshikage, and that's it. 0.3, that's what I've been using for Oshikage. A lot of the reels have 0.3, although there are some reels also that have 0.1, and that is very, very thin. Okay. Leaders. Okay, so I use very long leaders for my ultralights. This gives me a really long separation between my lure and my very visible braid. Okay, so especially when the water is clear, I think this is very important. So when you're fishing with mono, remember, even in shallow water, remember that no matter how clear that is, it still casts a shadow. And if your line doesn't spook the fish, the shadow does. And yeah, I've seen that happen. So a really long leader and really light helps. Okay. That's one of the things for me, is that I fish really long leaders, especially in ultralight. So sometimes I even, when I cast out, the mono is still there. You know, shorter casts, I'm fishing the leader, literally fishing the leader. And at that time, I'm fishing mono, right? So, or I'm fishing the leader. And the reason why I'm saying mono is because it's the next tip. I use mono more than fluorocarbon. Okay, this might surprise a lot of people, but when you're tying knots on fluorocarbon, it's stiff, remember. So you compare 4-pound test mono and 4-pound test fluorocarbon, even if they had the same diameter, you'll have a harder time tying a knot on fluorocarbon. And if you don't tie knots really well on fluorocarbon, guess what? The damn thing slips. Okay? And also, you have to remember that fluorocarbon sinks and mono floats. So for shallow water fishing, I'd rather use mono than fluorocarbon. Now, for deeper water fishing, and if I'm using, say, soft plastics that I want to be on the bottom the whole time, then fluorocarbon is your best bet. Another good thing with fluorocarbon is that if the fish you're fishing for gets spooked by the shadow, use fluorocarbon, because fluorocarbon would lay down on the sand, and it helps the lure track better when you're using jig heads and soft plastics. Okay, so fluorocarbon would actually lay on the sand while mono would actually kind of float up. So if you're fishing for fish that get spooked with shadows, or you're fishing with lures that what do you call this, that sink, okay, or you want to sink, or you want to sink faster, there we go. So fluorocarbon is it for you. But most of the time I use mono, okay, because I have 2.75 mono. I don't have that in fluorocarbon, and my fluorocarbon starts at like 3 pounds, or 4, actually no, that's 3 kg, so that's 6. So my fluorocarbon starts at 4, and I couldn't find fluorocarbon thinner than that, okay, and that's why I use mono. Now even in my offshore stuff now, I use a lot of mono more than I do fluorocarbon. It's just, you know, mono is kind of easier to use. And for fluorocarbon, you only have stiff. You don't have soft fluorocarbon because of its nature. Now, you'll find, let's say, Yozuri, and they have the hybrid, and it's very easy to tie. And you'll go like, yeah, what about this one? Well, it's only fluorocarbon coated. It's not really full fluorocarbon. 100% fluorocarbon is stiff. So yeah, just take note of that. Lures. All right. So I think first tip is that you have to have soft plastics. Soft plastics is by far the cheapest that you can find, and also some of the most flexible of the lot. All right. Now let me get a box of heads to show you. So I have a few examples of lures and jig heads. Okay, so jig heads. All right, so check this jig head out. This is already one of the best that I found for Western style jig heads. Okay, so that is a jig head from Berkeley. You can see the body there. When you put in JDM body on that, it would wreck it. Okay, so you'll find that JDM heads are like these. Okay, so believe it or not, this head is actually from Daiso. So that's cheap. That's a cheap jig head from Daiso. You find that the bodies are not going to be wrecked. Now, here's so when you're buying jig heads, check out the Japanese jig heads because they're kind of different. Yeah. Now we look at these. So these are ultralight lures from America. This is something that I asked my wife to buy me. Okay. So you'll find that the bodies will accept these jig heads more. Okay. You can find that, and it won't break. Okay. So that's ultralight US style. Okay. Now check this out. This is a worm from Japan, and you can find, and you can see that the body on this is actually quite thin, super small. Yeah. And if you put that, okay, you put that on a jig head like this, it's gonna get wrecked. It's gonna get wrecked. So you have jig heads like this, right? And they work really well. See? All right. So you put it there like that. I'll put one on for you. See? And that will work really, really well, as opposed to having, you know, stuff like this. So if I fished these little guys here, if I fished it, I might be able to catch like the bigger stuff, the bigger fish. But for the smaller fish that we go after, like take for example the scad, I'll have a hell of a time trying to catch the scad with that. Now, this is a hook from Major Craft, and you can see that they have like a sleeve there so that the body won't slip. Okay, so more expensive heads would have something like that to retain the plastic. Okay. Here's a hook from Owner in their Aji series, and you can find that they also have that see, a nylon retainer for the plastics. And believe it or not, you can actually make them yourself. So no hassle. It's just another one of those things that you can actually make. I make my own jig heads. So, you know, see, plastics, Japanese plastics, they're that tiny. And mind you, these are okay, here's an even smaller one. See? So you can find that these plastics are really, really small, and they're a much lighter presentation than the American counterparts. So this is a Bobby Garland. This is from Bobby Garland, and you know, look how big. If you guys want to see a comparison, I haven't opened this yet. That's why I can't really take it out. But here, let's have that separated, okay? And then we can compare it with one of the regular plastics from America or from Japan, and you can see exactly how big it is. Yeah. So there's the American size right there, and there's the Japanese size. It's like the tail is as big as the American stuff, you know? See? The tail is... So, for those guys in the States that have not seen anything like this yet, if you think that your soft plastics are actually small compared to, you know, and they're probably the tiniest stuff that you've seen, the Japanese stuff is like literally smaller. So their gear actually kind of goes together with that. So there you have 1 gram or even half a gram jig heads. Okay, so as far as lures go, soft plastics, there's a huge selection of them that's on top. All right, so next thing that I'm gonna talk about for lures, there are a lot of really small plugs that the Japanese market has. Okay, and it's not exclusively for what do you call this? It's not exclusively for, say, ultralight stuff only, or the smaller fish. They're used to target bigger fish. So in Rapala, we have the ultralight series, or ultralight shad, ultralight crankbait. Explore those because those are very useful fishing for bigger saltwater fish. And I've caught a lot of fish on the ultralight series lures, and they're not small, like decent sized fish on those lures. And then, so first, soft plastics, I've explained the whole thing, yeah? So one thing that you should have, plugs, crankbaits, those small minnows from Rapala and Storm. The Dense from Storm is actually really good. DENSE, okay? The Dense lure is actually pretty good. Ultralight crankbait from Rapala. The top waters, the small ultralight top waters, even the Chinese stuff I use. There's like this really tiny Chinese lure that's basically a banana boat from Yuzuri. So if you look at the banana boat from Yuzuri, there's a tiny version of that you find in AliExpress. I've used those to catch really good fish, and I have a ton of the blanks for those. Okay, Yuzuri banana boat. But imagine in the ultralight size, and holy crap, those work really well. So, spoons, like tiny cast masters, really tiny daredevils. Those things work a ton. I mean, really good. Little Cleo. Okay, so Little Cleo is really good. Holy crap, those things are really good, man. I mean, I've caught so much fish on those, and saltwater. Okay, and sight fishing these fish, it's crazy. And the secret, a PG reel. So I'm already giving you like a shortcut when it comes to these things. So pay attention. Alrighty. Now, that's it for the 3. What do you call this? For for the lures, the 3 tips on lures. Now, hooks. And this is something that I have to really mention because it's very important. Actually, it's hooks and split rings and other hardware. Okay. Now, if you're using snaps, okay, here's some snaps that I use, and I got this from Momoy. The guys over in Momoy came down, and then they showed me this, or they gave me these. Okay, so if you look, okay, I will need to take this off of autofocus and then really adjust it so that you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about here. So if you look there, okay, specifically at this end right here, you'll find that that's welded. Okay, so find snaps that are like these. That's welded there, and then this is not easy to open and close. Okay, it's super tough. But if you need to use snaps, look for these types. Okay, look for these types. Now the weld there, basically, it gives you kind of like a sense of security that at least that joint is not going to come off because it's freaking welded, right? If it's actually a snap that you can open, guess what? It will open, and you only have to find that one big fish that would do it. Okay, so instead of actually having 2 of those connections have the risk of opening, at least with this snap, you only have 1 thing to worry about. Well, 2 things because of your nut, right? So, but if you're like me and you want to be very careful, use a nut directly attached to your lure. And that's what I do. So basically, instead of using snaps, and that's why I still have a lot of these because I kind of don't use them, you know? There's actually 2 types of these. So as you can see, I still have like a lot of them because I don't really use them, you know, if given a choice. Now, I always have them still because if I need to actually swap, if there's like I'm testing out a few lures and I need to swap lures fast, so yeah, I have them, but that's not when I'm actually trying to fish. When I'm trying to fish, I take off as much of the hardware as possible and fish with the line going straight to the lure with a knot. I don't have to worry about anything except for that knot. Okay, as it is, you already have a lot of problems. So with the snap, you'll have, you know, that 1 point that's not welded that could open. It could be the snap itself that could open. So that's 2 things to worry about, and 1 thing plus another with your knot. 3 things to worry about. If you take off the snap, direct connection to the lure, 1 thing to worry about, and it's just the knot. So your decision, okay? But if you have to use a snap, look for those types. I'm not too sure where they got those, but I'm pretty sure if you look around, you'll find them. Okay, so next thing, split rings. Okay, split rings. More often than not, a lot of lure manufacturers will actually put split rings that are too big for the lures. And to really have the best performance out of that particular lure and stealthy, buy the right sized split rings. Now, when it comes to like these manufacturers, even Rapala is notorious for this. They cannot buy a lot of sizes because they use that for a really big amount of lures. Okay, so they just pick out a few of the sizes and they order millions of them. Adding another size is actually contributing to the overhead. So a lot of these manufacturers, Rapala included, okay, and that's the biggest manufacturer in the world, guys. So, you know, even they do this. So I can't really fault them because majority of the people that buy the lures are not really super technical. But if you want to bring out the best out of your lures, and I'll give you an example. You guys want to see like a really badass lure for queens? It's that one right there. This stick bait is freaking nuts. For like, you see those bite marks? That's actually from queenfish. This is the flutter stick from Storm. Now, here's a very good example. If you look at the split ring right here, that's too big for this lure. But judging from the bites that you see there, it still works, right? But you can actually change those to make this lure move even better. That's Storm, guys. Imagine, that is Storm. So, even with Storm, you can find that they have, like, okay, here's another example. You see the split ring from this rip and wrap? Look, that's too big for this lure. It's literally too big for this. But again, like I said, they order from one supplier and they order millions of these at a time. Okay, another example, if you look here, this is Countdown, X-Wrap Countdown. Look at the size of those split rings. They're too big for this lure. So when you buy a lure, if you want it to actually swim really well, order the appropriate sized split rings. Okay, and I haven't done that because, like I said, these lures actually work well already. The hooks are okay. You know, for these lures, the hooks are balanced for those. But if you actually change the split rings, boom, it'll swim better. Trust me on this, okay? But buy the really good ones, because guess what? If you're buying the cheap ones, they're gonna open up. All right. So there are really good ones from Japan that fit really well on these, that are good for the hooks and stuff. Split rings matter, guys. All right. Now, the hooks themselves, our third tip. The hooks themselves. There are some lures wherein for the use that they're manufactured for, they're actually really good. But if you kind of get into the bigger fish and all that, they will bend out. Okay, so it's probably a good idea to upgrade them. And most of the time when I upgrade them, I have a crap ton of treble hooks there, specifically for changing these hooks. Okay, specifically to change these hooks. And that's pretty important, really. Okay, especially when you're dealing with ultralight and when you're consciously targeting bigger fish. Like, take for example, instead of 1x, I'll change them to 3x size, 3x hooks, and then the split rings, I'd change them to smaller but beefier split rings to support the added strain, especially when you're targeting bigger fish. So especially with ultralight stuff, just make it a habit to actually upgrade your split rings and hooks and your snaps. And that's something that will carry you over, especially when you're hooking that one-time fish that you're looking for. And trust me, elephants eat peanuts, guys. Like, man, I've caught so many good fish on light tackle. It's staggering. And it's I'm wondering why people are actually not doing well. Then again, if people start targeting them on lighter drags or lighter rods and reels, your drag has to be like, kind of precise. And a lot of people don't like that sort of thing. But if you're that type of nutcase like me, who like going after sizable fish with light tackle, this is the way to go. Okay, and that is it for this video. Hopefully, I've given you some tips and tricks that you would be able to apply and help your fishing get better. Now, if you haven't yet and you want to learn more, obviously, subscription is the answer. So subscribe, okay? Click on that notification bell while you're at it so that each time I publish a video, you'd be able to know. Alrighty, and if you learned from this video, give it a thumbs up. And more importantly, share this video to those guys that love ultralight fishing and want to learn. All right, so share, like, subscribe, the usual stuff. Okay, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the members that have signed up. And if you want to see the videos first before everyone else, I publish it first to members. And if to become a member, just click on that join button. Alrighty. Once again, thank you very much for the members. They help this channel move forward by supporting this channel with the extra stuff that they give us. And obviously, that helps me make more videos like these. That's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed.